After going through this unit, the learner will able to understand the following: evaluation of established programs and its need, objectives lying under the evaluation of established programs, different perspective of evaluation of established program. A program that has been in existence for decades may also be subjected to evaluation for a variety of reasons. While the evaluation of innovative programs represents an important activity for the field, by far greater proportion of the program resource goes into the assessment of already established programs. The evaluation efforts related to the established program is less visible than those connected with new programs. More are conducted in house either by staff concerned with operating agencies or by such a governmental groups as the General Accounting Officer than by the university for profit or non-profit groups. Current conservative outlook regarding public support of social programs has increased pressure for scrutinizing established programs. Furthermore, since many established programs are costly, evaluations that evaluate in their customs or modifications may yield large program savings. Where for all these causes, the evaluation of established program is very impact to continuation of any program. Evaluating established program requires understanding the social and political situation when they were initiated and tracking the way in which they have been modified from their emergence until the time of the evaluation. Social programs are generally historically conditioned responses to social concerns. Most have sprung from traditional long-standing ameliorate efforts, and often there is considerable opposition from some of the stakeholders to any questioning of their fundamental assumption or the way they have been put into place. The value of guidance counselor in schools or vocational programs for handicapped or parole supervision for religious convicts and for community health educator for the prevention of diseases is taken for granted. Not only does the general public expect such program as a matter of course, but involved advocates and employees, a significant proportion of national labor force have an investment in their continuation. Thus, the pressures to maintain them are strong. At the same time, in many human resource sectors, there are programs that are clearly out activated their usefulness or that represent poor human services investment as currently implemented. Many are rooted in values and intervention models that no longer are relevant. Some have even lost their surface rationales and objectives over time. Such programs need to be modified, discarded in favor of other programs that yield greater benefit to cost ratios. A further inputs for evaluation of outgoing social programs is the current assessment in many quarters about the proliferation and rudimentary spinning cost of established programs and public funded required about we choose what we should support and in what magnitude. Consequently, a variety of stakeholder groups are raising serious questions about the extent in which programs operate efficiently and follow physical, legal and operational requirement. In addition, constituencies and advocates of a particular program are concerned with their impact and cost to benefit ratios to comparison to those programs with which they compete for scholarship and funds. For all these reasons, policy makers responsible for resource allocation, program managers who must defend implementation and concern of established programs, the evaluability perspective. The idea discussed in the section stem from the experiences of an evaluation research group at the Urban Institutes in 1970s, whose evaluation efforts led them to related conclusion. First, they found it difficult, sometimes impossible, to evaluation of public program because managers and other stakeholders resisted, were incooperative or failed to grasp the purpose of the study. Second, he found that too frequently modify the programs. This led to the view that a systematic approach, which wholly termed evaluability assessment, should precede most evaluation efforts. Evaluability assessment or pre-evaluations are designed to provide a climate favorable to future evaluation work, require informative acquaintance with an agency or programs. In addition, it also reveals implementations correspondence to the programs as defined by those who created to policy and operational procedures. If not, any evaluation that is undertaken will probably be useless. As evaluability assessment requires the commitment of program staff and in many cases sponsors and relevant policy makers to collaborate in expliciting objectives, describing the program and deciding on evaluation task. Although it can be argued that the prescribed evaluability assessment, this is often not the case. Conducting evaluability assessments and evaluability assessment can be looked upon as a process of closing or choosing of what constitutes the objectives and the proper implementation and management of a existing program. It is conducted under the following step. Number 1, preparing the program description. A description of the program is written based on formal donations, documentations such as legislation, administrative regulations, funding proposal, published brochures, administrative manuals, annual report, minutes and completed evaluation studies. The description includes statement identifying program objectives and cross-classifying them with program elements and components. Interviewing program personnel, key people are interviewed to gather their descriptions of the goal and rationales of the program, as well as to identify actual program operations. From this information, models of both the intention of the actual operation of the program are developed and subsequently verified with personnel interviewed. Third, scouting the program. Although evaluability assessments do not include formal research in the sense of the large scale data collection, they do generally include site visits or obtain a finished impression of how programs actually operate. These impressions are correlated and informed with information from documents and interviews. 4. Developing an evaluable program model from the various types of information obtained, the program elements and objectives to be considered for inclusion and evaluation plans are explicated. 5. Identifying evaluation users. Next, the purposes of evaluation activities to be undertaken together with the key stakeholders to whom they are being directed and identified, in addition to the which decisions on changes would be made. 6. Achieving agreements to proceed. Finally, the evaluation plan is reviewed with the various stakeholders. The process of information collected during the course of evaluability assessment typically include dialogue with key individual and groups. At this point, most components of the plan have been accepted before the various stakeholders sign off on the plan. However, the explicit argument should be replicated on the following points. A. Program objectives. What are the program aspire to accomplish? B. Program components to be analyzed, the design of the evaluation and the priorities for undertaking the work. C. The commitment of required from resources together with necessary cooperation and collaboration. D. A plan for utilizing the evaluation results. E. A plan for efforts required from program staff to strengthen the evaluability potential of programs component not currently amenable to evaluation and approach for subsequently building them into the evaluation effort. To a considerable extent, evaluatory assessment makes use of what are generally referred to as qualitative research procedures. In many ways, evaluability specialists operate like field researchers in a conventional qualitative study. This is, they seek to describe and understand the program in terms of social reality as held by the program personnel and stakeholder interviewed. A certain part of evaluability assessment is fair standard, such as obtaining sufficient information to documentation program, former organization structures and its informal authority and influence structure, and to account for the difference between them. A certain statistically data almost invariably are obtained, including, for example, an accurate report on numbers and types of staff and targets served. Accountability and monitoring studies. A frequent evaluation activity in established program conducted either as consequences of outside mandates or on the basis of evaluability assessment is the planning and design of an accountability study. Accountability studies are directed at providing information about various aspects of program to stakeholders and program managers. It studies require monitoring one or more aspects of the ways programs are being implemented and the conditions under interventions is taking place. In broader way, following are the most common types of accountability information that is required to obtain a study. Number 1, impact accountability. Impact accountability and evaluation of ongoing established programs is discussed in detail at the beginning stage. Staff arrangements and program activities can be organized in a way that will facilitate the collaboration of data required for estimates of impact. Efficiency accountability. Impact in return to program cost is obviously important both internally in terms of judging relative benefits and effectiveness against costs of different program elements, and externally in competing for resources in the context. Adequate and valid data on program expenditure as related to program activity must be collected. Coverage accountability. The key questions here related to the number and characteristic of targets, the extent of prevention and penetration dropout rates, and so on. Service delivery accountability. It is usually necessary to assess how the actual operation of a program conforms to program plans. Next, fiscal accountability. All programs have clear responsibility to account for use of fund in their fiscal reports, but in addition to what is strictly an accounting responsibility, a range of other cost questions may be pertinent under it. For example, cost per client and cost per service or data may not be glared from the fiscal report. Next, legal accountability. All programs, public and private, requires commitments in order to meet legal responsibility. These include informed consent, protection of privacy, community representation on decision making bodies, equity in the provision of services, and cost sharing. In public program, adequate compliance with legal requirement often is prerequisite for continued funding. In developing accountability strategic, there are two important considerations: continuous versus cross-sectional evaluation and internal versus external assessment. Continuous versus cross-sectional evaluation. A key decision in planning accountability evaluation is whether to implement a continuous or a cross-sectional effort. Many large programs employ monitor and information system, often referred to as management information system (MIS), that allow them to assess the work and results of their programs on an ongoing basis. Continuous cross-sectional evaluation study. is a procedure that allows for regularly collection and maintaining information on such a matter as the characteristic of clientels, their problems or reasons for seeking treatment and their outcomes, and conducting special studies as a single point of time. When the latter type of a study, referred to as a cross-sectional study, generally collects data around a small window of time, usually in conjunction with a specific evaluation activity or because a specific need of the program manager or to represent an influential stakeholder. Continuous systems are sometimes criticized as overkill, and since they do represent a permanent commitment of resources, they need to be justified by their actual use. Cross-sectional studies were undertaken from time to time. Many carries with their expensive startup cost and may be resisted by the program staff since they are not perceived as part of routine operation. Internal versus external evaluation. Accountability evaluations raise the issue of whether programs should undertake their own evaluations or contact with outsiders. On the one hand, it is clear that in accountability evaluations, the evaluator must know a great deal about program operation, both to design an evaluation and to engage in the consultation, education and dialogue required, maximizing its utility. On the one hand, there are the risks that our evaluation, who is the part of the program staff, will be cooperated, and that sponsor and stakeholder outside the program staff will be suspicious on the authenticity of findings. In the end, evaluations of established programs are quantitatively the same as evaluation of innovative interventions. The three key distinctions in style are: number one, the increased emphasis on inferring a program evaluation model for existing outcome program activity, much more deliberate attention in stakeholders' views, responsible and influences. Number three, the recognition that frequently are important descriptions between two programs are formally described through to operate by staff targets and the range of stakeholders and how they operate in reality. Evaluations of established programs may focus on impact and cost to benefit ratio, but often assessments are limited to an examination of service delivery. In such case, the evaluation centers on monitoring questions whether or not appropriate target groups are served and the extent to which program staff and management are meeting commitments with respect to quality and quantity of service delivered. The human services are in high vulnerable to serious responsible questioning of the way programs are conducted, as well as political and publicity related attacks. Evaluation results both from monitoring of program implementation and from the assessment of impact and efficiency can influence the decision on the fate of the programs and the organizations responsible for them. Thank you.